Hey guys, Paul Argueta. One of the things that I hate the most about being a real estate agent is having a deal fall apart days before it's supposed to close. A deal that I may have invested time, money, and effort into only to watch it crumble away. Today I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to keep your deals from falling apart. Thanks for visiting my channel. Please make sure that you press on the subscribe button and make sure that you also participate in the conversation. So if you think that there's something that other viewers could benefit from, by all means comment. If you think that there may have been something that I missed, comment. If there's something that you enjoyed, comment. If you like the suit, comment, whatever. Just participate in the conversation. Also make sure that you press on the bell icon, okay? So that way you can get alerts anytime new content is being uploaded right away. Now, today we're going to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves is when deals fall apart, okay? And look, you can't control that. And not every one of your escrows is going to close, okay? No one bats 1,000%. But there are certain steps that you can take to minimize the number of deals that fall out. So today I'm going to give you those 4 tips. The very first tip is preparation. Preparing your client for what the process is going to be like. So let's talk about tip number 1. When you have a buyer and you are representing them in the escrow process, you want to prepare them for the next steps that are going to come, which are the earnest money deposit being deposited within 72 hours. Now, in different states, it might have different time frames. It's always better to prep your client that their earnest money deposit has to be deposited within 24 to 48 hours tops, okay? Prepare them for that. Prepare them for the fact that they're going to have to conduct a home inspection within the next 72 hours, right? That's always good practice. Now, most contracts allow for a little bit more time during the inspection. I'm going to suggest that you try to do it during 72 hours. Now, there's a catch to that, right? Because if you open escrow on a Friday, it's going to be very challenging to find a home inspector to be able to go out and schedule a home inspection for you the following weekend or the very next Saturday or the very next Sunday, because most home inspectors have their calendars already full. Now, look, you might be able to find another one, you may not, but if that happens, prepare the client that we need to conduct a home inspection right away. Find a home inspector that can help you, okay? So you complete the home inspection. Prepare the buyer for the fact that the home inspector is going to find everything that they can that is right and everything that they can that is wrong about the property. Prep the client. Now, if you're in a market, for instance, in Los Angeles, which is where I predominantly work, a lot of these homes are turn-of-the-century homes. In one of the neighborhoods that I really love, which is South Pasadena, there are a ton of turn-of-the-century craftsman-style homes. In Pasadena, there are a ton of bungalow-style homes that were built in the early 1900s. Some of these have been remodeled. Some of them may not be house-bolted. But these are all things that you have to prepare the buyer for, because if they're not buying a brand new home, especially for a new home buyer, a first-time home buyer, a lot of the little things that might pop up during the home inspection are going to frighten them, concern them, and it may even freak them out. So just prepare them. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I just want you to know you're not buying a brand new home. This isn't new construction. This isn't new build. And as a result of that, there are some things that are going to pop up during the home inspection, and I want you to be prepared for that. Also prep them for the difference between an upgrade and a repair. Those are 2 completely different things, and I'm not going to go into it here, but again, it goes into preparation, preparing your client, setting the stage for what is going to come so that they're mentally ready for it, right? Then, after the home inspection, they're going to have the opportunity to do a request for repairs or a renegotiation of contract or renegotiation of price. Now, all of these things are things that should be done during a buyer's consult, right? So just be prepared for that. Now, on the flip side, when you're representing the seller, you want to prepare them for these things as well. A good listing agent is going to prepare their seller for the reality that, hey, look, I need you to hide all of your valuables. If you have any valuables, if you have any jewelry, if you have any heirlooms, if you have any guns, anything like that, I need you to put it in a safety deposit box. I need you to put it in a storage. I don't want it in the house. These are the types of conversations you need to have with the seller. Let them know that there is going to be a super lockbox on the property, right? So let them know that you may not always be there during all of the showings. Now, some sellers might suggest that you are there during each of the showings. That's a possibility, but at least prep them for the fact that, hey, look, I'd like to be here for the majority of the showings. I may not be able to be here for all of the showings, and that's why I'm going to be using a super lockbox so that the other agents representing the buyers can come in here and show the home while I'm not around. Okay, so you want to have these conversations. You want to prepare them for that possibility. When offers come in, prepare the seller for, hey, look, We may get some lowball offers, right? That's just the nature of the beast. Don't be offended by it. Continue the conversation. It's always good to continue countering, even if they are lowball offers, because you never know where they're going to land. And again, this is all about your professionalism and your ability to convey the right message. But you need to have them prepared. Okay. You also prepare them for the escrow process, the escrow period. If there's a pre-sale city inspection, you prepare them for that. In fact, you should have the pre-sale city inspection done. Good tip is to have it done prior to actually putting it on the market so that you know if anything is going to pop up so that they can be disclosed a little bit later on. Prep your seller for disclosure. Prep them that they're going to have to disclose the good, the bad, and the ugly about the property, right? These are all things that you want to do. Prepare them for a request for repair. Prepare them for a possible renegotiation. These are all things that you want them to be prepared so that when it does happen, right, they'll think to themselves, well, you know what? I remember when Paul talked to me about this and he said that these things that could happen, and he's already prepped me for how he's going to solve them and how we're going to navigate those waters. Your clients will have much more confidence in you and they'll trust you more when they know that you've already experienced this and you know how to handle it the minute that it comes. So one of the best ways to prevent fallout of escrows or fallout of deals is by preparing the client. Preparation. So the second thing that you want to do to prevent fallout or to prevent cancellations of escrows is number 2. You want the client to feel like they're right. Okay, now listen, there's a saying that the client is always right. Some people are going to agree with that. Some people are going to disagree with that. But the real sales professional knows how to convey the right message so that the client still does what you need them to do, but they feel like they are making that decision on their own. So a good practice is learning how to express what it is that you want them to do, but giving them the option so that they could make that decision on their own so that they feel like they're right. Okay, so for instance, let's talk about requests for repairs. If a buyer comes and a buyer says to your client, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, hey, look, we want about $10,000 in repairs, and you've already prepared your seller for that possibility, right? You prepared them for this after the inspection. Well, now the seller may say something to the effect, hey, Paul, listen, I don't want to give them any money. We're not going to credit them back any type of money. Now, the old version of Paul would have said, you know what? That's not the right thing to do. You should credit them back some money, give them the $10,000 or give them half of the money or offer them something. You know, that's really the best way for you to handle this. Now, if a client asks me how I would suggest that we handle it, I'm going to give them that advice. But if the seller or the client is already telling me, this is how I want it to be handled, and I look, as a professional salesperson, you can do one of two things. You can agree with them. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand why you would respond this way and why you'd want to respond this way. Here's how I'm going to recommend that we address this situation. That's one possible way. The other possible way is Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So what you're telling me then is you want me to go back to the buyer and let them know that you're rejecting their request for a $10,000 credit back or rejecting their request for a $10,000 price reduction. Is that correct? Is that what you want me to do, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And they'll say either yes or they'll say no, or they will then say, what do you think we should do? But see, if you come in slugging and you're already turning this into a battle and you're making them feel like you're not listening to their requests, it's going to be very difficult to get them to move into action. So my recommendation is at least give them that opportunity or give them choices and then wait and see what they say and then follow directions. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you want me to present a rejection? I'll go present that rejection, right? At least they feel like they've been heard. At least they feel like you're following their instructions, right? And then you go back and you present the rejection and you talk to the agent. Now we're going to talk about why that's so important in just a little bit. But when you go back and you talk to the agent, right, at least now you have a meeting of the minds and the two agents can try to find a way to get this thing to work out, okay? But make the client feel like they're being heard, make the client feel like they're right, and give them the option to at least decide what course of action they want to take next until they come to you and say, what do you recommend? Tip number 3, work with the other agent, okay? This is very important because a lot of times we get so involved in defending our point of view and in defending our client's point of view that it turns into a battle royale with the other agent. So if I'm representing the buyer and they're representing the seller, it turns into a battle between the two agents. And that is probably the best way to kill a deal, right? Because the agents are then acting as mediators, and they're bringing the two parties to the table to try to find a happy ground where both parties feel like they're winning. But when you've got two agents that are at each other's throats and they're fighting with one another, it's very difficult to mediate. So going back to the example that I talked about earlier, if I know that my client is going to reject the $10,000 price reduction request or the $10,000 credit back request from the buyer, I'm going to call that agent and I'm going to say, hey, listen, my seller really wasn't too thrilled about your buyer's request for $10,000. They're very, very upset by it. They just rejected it. Go back to the buyer and see what the buyer says. And if the buyer says, you know what, I'm going to kill this deal as a result of that, come back to me immediately. Let me know. Let's find a happy medium between you, your buyer, and my seller. But let's work on this together. That's a completely different conversation versus the conversation me calling the selling agent or the listing agent or whoever it might be and saying, hey, listen, my client wants $10,000 or they're going to walk. Right? That type of posturing, while it might feel good, it may boost your ego temporarily, doesn't do anything for the deal, and it increases the chances of it falling out. So it's very important that as agents, you work together to mediate, right? As opposed to, puffing up your chest and trying to show how strong you are. Okay? So number 3, work with the other agent on the other end of the table. Tip number 4, keep moving forward. All right, this is important because what tends to happen, and it has happened to me, and I know what it feels like, you go into your inbox, you're checking your email, you get an email from your client, and your client is basically instructing you, kill the deal, cancel it, I don't want to do this anymore, we're done, right? Trust me, for whatever reason, okay, most people tend to use the kill the deal phrase as their, not their Hail Mary, but as their posturing phrase. Trust me, it happens to all of us and it is going to happen to you. You will receive an email from your client and they're going to instruct you to kill the deal. Now, I am going to tell you that there are moments where that is real. There are some times where the gap is just too great and you're not able to save the deal. That happens. But there are many times, and for whatever reason, buyers and sellers tend to lean on kill the deal. I don't have to sell. I don't have to buy. I don't have to move it. They tend to use that as their go-to phrase when they're negotiating. And they think that that's how they're going to leverage and that's how they're going to get posture. Call it what you want. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that it's not always accurate, because sometimes it is accurate. But a lot of times I've had clients that have used that 2, 3, 4 times in the same transaction. And at some point when it's like the boy who cried wolf or the girl that cried wolf, you don't really believe it as much anymore. So just make sure there will be times where your clients will use the kill the deal phrase way too often during the transaction. And that's when you start to figure out that, that's their go-to move. That's their go-to phrase. That's when they're trying to use that as a negotiating tactic. Okay. My recommendation to you is keep moving forward. And the reason that I'm suggesting that you keep moving forward is because I've seen amazing things happen during the process, right? Look, nobody likes the process. The process can be stressful for both the buyer and for the seller. And you as the captain of the ship are navigating the ship, and it's your job to get it from destination A to destination B, from stressful island to happy island. That's your job. And if you get caught up in all of the emotional roller coaster and you become paralyzed by it because you're not moving forward, it just increases the chances of the deal being killed. So for instance, right, you're negotiating a request for repairs. Buyer's asking for a $10,000 reduction. Buyer's asking for a $10,000 credit back. And then you get a call from the appraiser, and the appraiser says, I need to get into the property so that I can do the appraisal. The older version of me would have said, you know what, cancel the appraisal. We haven't figured this thing out between the request for the repairs or the credit back, okay? And then I would stop everything that was going on. Don't do that, right? Keep moving forward. Now, Paul, isn't that dangerous? Why are you having the buyer spend more money on an appraisal when they haven't even figured out what they're going to do with the credit back or with the price reduction? Well, here's the deal. Number one, the appraisal has already been paid for, right? Okay. And number two, Again, if you keep the process going, right, and everyone sees that the wheels are still in motion, nobody likes to buy, but everybody likes to own, right? Yeah, during the process, it's stressful, but by the time they're in their house and they're enjoying their family dinners or they're enjoying their backyard, everything changes. You have to keep that in mind during the process. So the idea here is keep moving forward. Don't stop the process just because you ran into a little bit of a hiccup or because you're having to renegotiate a few things. This is probably one of the best tips that I can give you right now, okay? So let's recap. The first thing that you want to do to keep your deals from falling apart is prep your clients. The second thing that you want to do from keeping your deals from falling apart is allowing the client the opportunity to vent and to feel like they're listened to so that they're right. The third thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you work with the agent as a team to close a transaction as opposed to it being a Royal Rumble from WWE. And the fourth thing that you want to do is you want to keep moving forward even though during the process there are times, several times, many times where you will feel like this deal is dead. Keep moving forward. All right, so listen, I appreciate you watching this video. I appreciate you participating in the dialogue and in the conversation. I look forward to seeing your comments on the bottom. If you think that there's other people that could benefit from this video, by all means, please share it with them. Share the YouTube link with them. Make sure that you subscribe. And lastly, make sure that you press on the bell icon so that you can be alerted anytime I get new content that I'm creating or curating for you and I'm uploading it to our videos. All right, I hope you're well. Here's to your success. Talk to you soon.